Hey everyone, it's Bobo the Vulture, and this is more Let's Play Gran Turismo 2. The game is loading, don't fear, because you see a completely black screen there. So let's see. Yeah, last time I felt like I just wanted to win something, so I got two of them. I'm surprised I even managed to hang on to one without just selling it out of complete and utter disgust. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do right now, actually. Because I got this GT40, which it says it's race modified there. It doesn't say it's race modified in the actual races. I'm going to get into it. I'm getting into it. And I'm going to go ahead and tackle Unenduro. Unendurable sadness. Because there is, the Seattle Circuit 100 miler here is, if I remember right, and it has a horsepower limit. Actually, the other GT40 would fit underneath that horsepower limit, but I don't think there are race-modified cars in this one. This one is for, like, the coolest American road cars. Yeah, there's like a Viper in there. You got Shelby GT, Superbird, Cuda. It's a pretty nice array there. And Detroit, it's there. It's a ringing endorsement of Detroit, am I right? So the thing about the endurance races is there's actually more than one car that you can win for most of them. Not the first one. Not the first one. The lowest tier one, the Trial Mountain Enduro. Let's go to settings. Let's get ourselves on hard tires. There are no super hard. Yeah, let's get hard tires on here. And tell you what, let's not waste any time. Let's go ahead and just start the race. I have no idea how long this event's going to be. I have no idea how long this video is going to be. I know I started it sometime around... Oh. Alright, so there is a Dodge Viper in here. It's a car that has more horsepower than mine. Actually, many of the cars have more horsepower than this. Alright, 40 laps, eh? Well, we'll see how many laps we can get out of this set of tires. And as I say, in theory, I could have brought the Golf GT40 out here. But I thought I'd be sporting and take out what is in theory a non-dedicated sports car, although this is really a sports car, masquerading as a road car. They don't really make a clear distinction in that they don't call this the road car. They just call the other one the race car, which implies this one is not a racing GT40. Which, of course, would put it in a pretty big minority. I mean, being a GT40 at all would put it in a big minority, but, you know, GT40s, they made enough road legal versions to be able to justify the well, as I said, in later years, after it was out of the top prototype class, or they were doing later iterations of them in the top production class, they were still racing the original GT40s, or the Mark 1 and 2s, as quote-unquote production cars, because they'd managed to make and sell a few cars for the road. But basically, this is more bitterness from me. If I can't win that one historic car race with this GT40, even though the computer's able to put GT40s in the race, well then I'm just going to go out and win an Enduro. And what I should plan to do as well, is check. I mean, it may be something like, oh, there's a sports muffler equipped on this car out of the factory from Ford. Wow, I cannot get this thing going on a straight keel going up this crazy bouncy hill. Virtue of its crazy mid-engine weight distribution. You know, I'm not pulling out an obscene gap or anything when I am in these long straight sections, but like on terms of just general overall pace, I'm not like waxing the floor with these guys. With the possible exception of the Viper, though, that's actually kind of surprising, because I mean, yes, there are more modern cars in this race. The GT40 was like a world-class, all-conquering sports car of its time. And I mean, admittedly, like... Alright, so that wasn't the best way out of there, but, you know, it was enough. And admittedly, the great sports cars of like the 60s and you know, the finest road cars of like the 60s or 70s and even into the 80s, like in terms of sheer numbers of how quick they are, acceleration numbers and like how long, you know, stuff like that, engine horsepower and whatever. I mean, some modern, like, family sedans would probably... Because, like, I had, this is even just, like, 10, 15 years ago. I used to have a 1995 Nissan Maxima, which was, in its day, and perhaps a little shocking, it was apparently a surprise to people. They were not I mean, the Nissan Maxima had always been a, you know, like, oh, in terms of a four-door, it's a pretty respectable sports sedan. They, before 95 and previous iterations of the car, had marketed it as the four-door sports car, which, you know, you might say that's a stretch, but whatevs. It was a good, solid, fun, quick car. And Mine, the 95 model, which was the first year of a redesign, had 190 horsepower out of the V6 engine. And it was actually, for its time, a pretty fast car. I had the 4-speed automatic on it. The 5-speed manual was actually the fastest accelerating Japanese sedan available in the U.S. at the time. It was faster than any like Lexus or Infiniti or Acura or any of those things. It was solid, man. It was solid. I mean it, man. I mean it. And of course, it was a 0 to 60 time of 6.6 seconds. So just a hair over 6.5 seconds. Which, well, in terms of the horsepower, I mean, like the base 4-cylinder engines of like family sedans make near that much horsepower, if not more. And are nearly as fast as that to 60. But like basically what I mean to say is like, so maybe 10 years on, what was exceptional in a car in terms of performance becomes pretty commonplace. So I'm not saying that the Nissan Maxima was like the fastest car available in general in 1995, but it was at a top speed of 141 miles an hour and 0 to 60 time of 6.6 seconds, give or take. This is what I get for reading those car magazines in that time. And it's the same sort of like I'll say stuff like that, but then there's like sort of, you'll hear people talking about old cars from the 60s and saying like, oh, well, this car had a strapping, rip-roaring 120 horsepower engine, and it accelerated from 0 to 60 miles an hour in 8.5 seconds. It was a rocket ship. And be like, what? What? So, yeah, it had all that going. But this is a car from the 1960s being raced against a car from the 1990s, or being raced against cars from the 1990s. And, I guess the difference here being that this was like state-of-the-art, no-expense spared racing technology of the 60s, going up against mass-market car technology of the mid-90s. Well, that certainly seems to, sort of grinding against that wall certainly seemed to stop the car in a hurry. Interesting. I suppose in real life grinding the car against a wall would do that, but the cars all seem to be made of rubber and nothing seems to be made of glue in this game. I probably could have, if I had really felt like it, and it was an option in this car. It probably is, but I don't remember for sure. But I probably could have tightened up the gear ratios. There's no real need to, though. It's not like the car has a real, like, slow or dead spot in its acceleration curve. So, yeah. I think I already told the story of how the GT40 came to be. Basically, Henry Ford Jr., I believe it was, believed he had a deal with Enzo Ferrari to buy Ferrari. Which honestly really wasn't that great a financial move. Because, I mean, Ferrari was self-sustaining, they were okay, but they weren't a huge money-making venture. They supported themselves alright. Basically, Enzo Ferrari's philosophy had always been he sold road cars to support running a top-level racing team that made cars of his own design, or the of the Ferrari's own design. So, you know, and I mean, of course, the man passed away in, I guess it was 1988? But either way, he's passed away, so, you know, things that you hear say about him now are all sort of, you know, they're getting more and more folklore-y as time goes on. Hi, I'm folklore. But, you know, there are stories about him having sort of like open contempt and disdain for the people who bought Ferrari road cars as basically just, you know, cash cows that were buying sort of whatever he could sort of scrap together. Oh, this poor fool. Alright, so this is our first victim. It's got like a Plymouth Belvedere or something? I don't even know. Did we just pass Mr. Belvedere? I don't know. Well, perhaps that can be our sign for the future. The moment we seem to be ready to shift into 5th gear on that big, long straightaway section there, we'll know that that's actually time to start braking. Alright, at lap 10, you can see the rear tires there are well and truly sort of worn in a little. Jeez, you know, the perspective here, it's difficult, especially when you start getting into cars that are this fast in this game. I hate to say it now, going back, I feel like this is still one of the best driving sims that ever got made. But looking at it now, many years later, and honestly, it's rare that I say this. I personally feel as though there's sort of a diminishing. I tend to think there's a diminishing returns that you get from each new generation of like game console. Like the difference between, you know, sort of like Magnavox Odyssey 1 and like Pong consoles and things like that to Atari 2600 was huge. Because the 2600s had, you know, like color, had some sounds, all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, basically, they had more than just like a long, thin blip of line. And then you go from there to, from, let's say, like the Atari 2600 up to the regular Nintendo. The regular Nintendo, you're actually beginning to get enough sort of graphical ability that you can produce text. Not like photorealistic, but like certainly like, oh, I can tell that that's a person's face or something, you know, and it has facial features on it, and able to produce a lot more colors on the screen at the same time. Sound improves to the point where, like, yes, there were some Atari 2600 games that had music, but for the most part, they just didn't bother. Because, I mean, it wasn't going to be super spectacular anyways. Although I will say, you ever played Pitfall 2? That game actually has some pretty epic music. And it's on an Atari 2600. Actually, I find that game startling in terms of what it was able to do with the 2600 hardware. Should go back and play around with it for an LP sometime. Or if I don't ever get around to it, I mean, even just look it up yourselves, if you're interested. If you remember playing 2600 and thinking, wow, these games are super simple and super dumb, or if you've never played 2600 and all you really know about it is, hey, they dug up a bunch of ET cartridges in a landfill in New Mexico, and you saw somebody playing ET and like, wow, this game looks awful. I'm like, yeah, kind of was. It got designed in like 2 weeks by one guy. Give it a break. I remember reading somewhere too for E.T. that when they showed it to, when they pitched the idea of the video game to the guys who were making the movie, they were like, no, we want it to be something like Pac-Man. We want like E.T. to be running around in a maze getting Reese's Pieces. And I was like, no, man, I'm gonna try and make an epic quest that mirrors the film in some way. Gonna make him make his phone and be chased after by scientists and government agents. So that all took place. But yeah, Pitfall 2, pretty amazing. Still, clearly a 2600 game in, you know, when you set it up against, you know, I mean, even like Super Mario Brothers, as great a game as it is, for the Nintendo Entertainment System, really graphically simple. Like, the character shapes were all basic. There were, you know, it sort of looked blocky and that kind of thing. You'd see later, I mean, like, compare the graphics of Super Mario Bros. 1 to either Super Mario Bros. 2 or Super Mario Bros. 3, really. And just note how much the, you know, graphics have improved in that time. But even Super Mario Brothers, the original, still looked better than pretty much any 2600 game you could think of. Um, I'm not saying that as a knock on the 2600. The Nintendo Entertainment System, you know, came out in the US in, what was it, 1985. The 2600 came out in 1977, so, you know, they'd had a few years to figure out what they needed and didn't need and what kind of kinks to sort of iron out in a, like, mass market video game console by the time they got around to the NES. Of course, the Sega Master System, which also had brilliant graphics compared to, you know, the late 70s originating 2600. Like, you realize they were still making and selling Atari 2600s into the 90s? Or at least 1990, I think. They were selling Atari 2600 Junior consoles for under $50. Now, wasn't that nice? That's part of they had a cool advertising campaign. The fun is back. Oh yes, sirree, it's the 2600 from Atari. As this whole, you know, thing. It was that sort of 80s into early 90s style commercial rapping, you know. But yeah, I feel like there is a diminishing returns with each new console. Like, you're still talking about huge steps ahead. And when you get into the 16-bit consoles, the Genesis, the Super Nintendo, yes, there are clearly games that are being done. There are clearly games that were done on the Super Nintendo and the Genesis that wouldn't have been able to be done on an NES or a Master System. You know, things like F-Zero. Got the awesome music going, got the cool, like, Mode 7 scaling and all that stuff. I mean, heck, games just having the sort of, like, epic size of, like, a Final Fantasy 3, which I guess was... I'm sorry, folks. I know it as Final Fantasy 3. The Super Nintendo US... The game released in the US as a Super Nintendo title called Final Fantasy 3, which I guess was actually Final Fantasy 6. I don't know. But that game... Or 2/4. I don't really get it. I don't know. I'm missing parts. I get that. But that was a huge step forward. I dare say that sort of that might not have been as huge as that wasn't as big a step from 8-bit to 16-bit sort of era. It was not as big a step as you know, 2600 sort of to the NES kind of a time frame. That said, I think maybe one of the biggest leaps would have then been from the 16-bit to... I realize N64 was of the same iteration, but sort of like... You had Sega, and then you had Sony coming in, and they were all sort of starting to work on the idea that, no, we think disc media is probably the way of the future on this. And Nintendo was like, no man, cartridges are cool, check them out. And they're right, cartridges are cool. I love cartridge games. We've talked about that, you and I. But this was a huge step forward. And I feel like there hasn't been as big a step forward as the transition from, you know, Super Nintendo to, like, PS1 or something like that, ever since. Like, to the point now where I'm like, you know, I have PS3 and I'm still playing PS1 games on it. And I really don't feel any need to buy PS4 because, well, one, there haven't been any like good releases of it yet. As far as I can tell, people are telling me like the only reason to buy a new gen console now is if you're a super diehard Nintendo fan, you already picked up a Wii U, or you know, if you're trying to judge between the Xbox One and the PS4. There's no reason to buy the PS4 yet. Xbox One, apparently Titanfall's really good if you enjoy the shooters and the robots. And I do enjoy the robots, not as much the shooters, which is weird to say, as the other game that I'm playing right now is Fallout 3, which can be played as a shooter, although I often tend to make good use of VATS, or at least try to. But basically, I was saying all of this to come around to the point that I feel like I still feel like this is one of the best driving games that got made ever, and going back here now, I still love this game, but I am beginning to see some of its flaws. Wait, are you the second place car? Mr. Viper? Viper? Maybe it's presumptuous of me to think that the Viper is a second place car, but I would think it probably would be. The big one being the loading of faraway objects. And that may be something just of the coding of this game. That's probably emblematic of similar styles of game for the Sony PlayStation at the time. As I probably mentioned a couple of times during this LP, I never noticed it. My fresh-faced look at this game when it first came out, and in the years surrounding, sort of during the years that I would have been actively playing it as a fairly new player to the game. Not like during my first visit to the game, not in like a revisit years later, starting with a new garage and just sort of checking it out, like I'm doing now. But I never noticed it at the time, but I've read here and there that Gran Turismo 2 was rushed to market. Whether it was rushed to market or it was just they tried to pack too many features or make too many changes to the game late in the game's production cycle. Like I only recently read, I just actually read today, looking up information about the game. That you can I'm going to go ahead and change the tires here now, because this will be lap 20 of 40. So, and you can see the rears are starting to get a little bit chewed up. I don't think I'm going to be passed for first. If that Viper actually was the second place guy, I'm kind of stunned, but I'll try to drive a little bit more gently on this set. We'll see how that goes, huh? But yeah, I was reading only today, actually, that the Mercedes-Benz CLK GTR, and you're all asking yourselves, what are those words that you just said, Bobo? Well, some of you are like nodding knowingly, like, ah, yes. Did those acrobatic flips at Le Mans. Did somersaults, because they're not supposed to do that. I think Mark Webber was in the car for one of them, and oh, it's bothering me, I can't remember. There was another dedicated, hey, see, it looks like that Viper is just floating off in the very far distance. If you wind back to moments before I said that, you may be able to, well, it's still dancing up there. I don't actually mind doing heavy braking in this car, because that is going to more tear up the front tires than the rears. And the front tires seem to actually do okay on this. But that it was in the game, and then they did not acquire the rights to use the car. You need to change your tires, pal. Maybe he was so intimidated by the fact that this awesome GT40 was coming around to lap him. Well, it's good to know that they apparently are also simulating tire wear. Either that or the computer Dodge Viper is just not very good at managing that one corner. Yeah, I find it interesting they wouldn't have been able to obtain the rights to the Mercedes-Benz CLK GTR. But, especially since they appeared to have a variety of other cars from Mercedes in the game. So it's not like they weren't in talks with Mercedes. Trying to remember back to when this game came out, I mean, I suppose it's possible that this is like right around the time that the flips at Le Mans had happened or were happening. Mercedes pulled out of sports cars again. Well, they withdrew from Le Mans, and then they tried to figure out what to do with the rest of the program. I guess they didn't pull entirely out of sports cars, but they've not put on a campaign like that again, I tell you what. They've done DTM racing since. They got out of sports cars soon after and stayed out. Or have stayed out since, I should say. Endurance racing. Mercedes has a sort of very troubled history at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. That it was a Mercedes-Benz that flew into the crowd in 55. I think it was 55. Probably mentioned that story at some point in the past, too. But yes, it was the kind of thing where, like, oh wow, our car was coincidentally the one that took place in this horrific accident that caused a sizable loss of life. We kind of don't get to keep racing, do we? We kind of should just stop. And so they did. Paving the way for Ford. Those two events did not happen, one immediately on top of the other. Oh, whoops. There we go. This is a great car, Ford GT40. It may just be that cars that were made by Carroll Shelby, or that Carroll Shelby had some hand in, just captured the American imagination or something. But you will see a lot of you won't see a lot, but you will definitely see some, or they've made some in the past, kit cars designed to look like GT40s, and then you get the running gear out of some other car. Depending on the kits, a lot of exotic mid-engine-y kits will be based off of Volkswagen Beetles, because the engine's in the back. A lot of them will be based off of Pontiac Fieros, because they were fairly common and cheap for a while, and were mid-engined. Obviously, they did not have 7-liter V8s in them, as some GT40s did, but oh, catch it. No, subtle adjustments, subtle steering adjustments. Come on, analog. I guess I shouldn't be worried. I'm not going to lose this race. It'd still be nice to put in a good show and get around as cleanly as possible. Even though I took the middle of a twisty bit there, tried to take a moment to scratch my head. All kinds of little things that you don't think about that become incredible nuisances. Imagine if you were a real racing driver and your head itched. 'Cause I mean, guys, they gotta wear those fireproof balaclavas, and they gotta wear those helmets. They gotta have some amount of itchy going on underneath all that. I'm driving horribly. Could be because it's fairly late at night. I know, you're all saying, but Bobo, look at how sunny it is there in Seattle. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about it's not my bedtime or anything, but it's getting up on the time that I actually should go to bed on most work nights. And don't ever, because I always end up staying up too late. I'm just that kind of person. I never can get myself to bed on time. And then I don't wake up well. I'm not a morning person. It's just bad situations all around. So there you go. Do that, and do the other thing. But yeah, so you'll occasionally see GT40 kit cars. You occasionally see Shelby Daytona Coupe kit cars here and there. But apparently the single most copied car out there in terms of kits is the Shelby Cobra. And so then you could say, well, are they ripping off Shelby or are they ripping off AC? AC Motors was a British car company. They made the Roadster body and sort of chassis bits and pieces and things. And then Shelby put a giant engine in them. And, there's probably other fine-tunings that needed to be done to make all that work. All that had to get done, but the basic original car was your sort of standard 4-cylinder roadster, British roadster, called the Was that the Ace? Yeah, was it the AC Ace? I'm trying to remember now. Which is why in England, they were apparently sold as the AC Cobra, and in America and other places they were sold as the Shelby Cobra. Same car, different marketing strategies. Different dealer strategies probably as well. It's just a peaceful, easy feeling driving around this GT40. I just wish that I was allowed to use it in the same historical races as the computer. Seems a lot of cars in this going around you again, eh? Alright. It's not the cleanest pass, I know, but it'll suffice. Close enough for government work. I tell ya, live in Washington, D.C. I know a number of people who work for the government here or there, or who have worked for the government, and you know what? They don't use that phrase a lot. It's not something that you're just in a government office and like, well, I crunched these numbers, tried to do these budgets and fill out all these papers, and didn't have all the information I needed. And the supervisor will not go up to them and say, well, it's close enough for government work. So, if you're expecting that to happen, if you're expecting to apply for a federal job and hope that that sort of thing will happen, I hate to break it to you, but apparently they actually do appreciate accuracy where possible. This is not to get on some kind of soapbox about government oversight or anything like that. Just saying. There's not a conscious effort to just give up and not do things properly, as that particular phrase would seem to imply. Right. This is going nicely. It's going to be a long video, but you guys like a long video occasionally. Or maybe you don't. I don't know. I know I personally am a little apprehensive when I see that somebody has posted a rather long video. I don't feel like sometimes I necessarily want to devote an hour of my life or an hour and a half to something. Which is funny because, like, I won't devote an hour of my life to something, but I'll devote 2 half-hour chunks in a row. Maybe I just feel like I've accomplished more because I've completed watching 2 whole parts of this series instead of just one. Even though it makes no difference. Should probably try and avoid doing nice power slides, graceful as they are, and relatively simple to do with this car. It's just that simple. But yeah, broke too early, but what the hey. Got a nice smooth passage through that turn. I mean, all things being equal on this car, if it were just going to drive in a straight path and never turn, never accelerate hard, never brake hard. All those things being equal, I'm pretty sure the rear tires would still wear out first because the car has a rearward weight bias because the engine is back there. The weight distribution on a mid-engine car like this, especially on a racing mid-engine car like this, is going to be pretty good. But especially considering the size of engines they're putting in the GT40 and the fact that it's behind the driver, it's going to be a little heavier on the backside. Well, there you go, folks. We're 3/4 of the way through this event now. Are you ready to find out what our prize car is going to be? I am interested. Crunch. Oh, that is not what I meant to do. Having to start from a complete dead stop in this thing. That's just your gateway to Wheelspin Town, son. Good gracious, get off the wall, man! That man being me. And that little boy who nobody loved grew up to be Roy Cohn. Yeah. I don't know, folks. I don't know how well it translates, because I don't know if you're actually watching the screen as I do this race. Some people put these videos on and just sort of listen to them, because I've had people say they just enjoy the soothing sounds of my voice. And I would imagine in an Enduro, you could very well be just putting this on while you sit down for an hour's shift at the job or something. I don't know. So I don't know if it conveys visually when you see me driving around the car like this, but there's great joy in driving around this car, just sort of being able to just sort of swing around and maneuver so easily through this circuit, except for right there, really getting the car steady going through that one turn. I mean, there are sharper hairpins and things where it's far easier to get the car positioned well. And now in trying to talk about how easy it is to get the car positioned, I've gone through most of this lap not doing that very well because I'm trying to talk and put together coherent thoughts and drive at the same time. Usually I talk and don't put together coherent thoughts, but you guys already knew that because you've been listening. But just that one turn, and I think, this game, one of the graphical shortcomings that I was talking about was, the track loading. So you can't see your braking point. And in a car as fast as this, you don't actually see your braking point before you need to start braking. You just sort of have to know it's coming. Which, not because of background loading, but because of things like, terrain, trees, elevation changes, whatever, is something that actual people that are, racing cars will have to confront occasionally. A blind corner where they can't see the place where they're going to have to brake to get into and stuff. But yes, I was going to say, even so, there is a certain amount of joy that you take from sort of throwing around a great big, super fast, super cool car like this, taking it around this track, putting it through the paces, giving it what for. Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to pass you yet again. This is a different car, mind you. This is not necessarily the same car that I've been passing over and over. It's red, but it could be some other completely different car. A lot of cars are red. Most Ferraris are red because red is the Italian racing color. Look, Mr. Camaroman, you weren't making that turn properly anyways. But yes, this is a very difficult turn on the track because the car gets light. So getting yourself adjusted for this turn is difficult. Here, the car gets a little bit heavier because it has weight from braking, I should say. Deceleration sort of shifts the weight of the car in such a way that you get a little bit more extra responsiveness out of it. I don't know that this is simulated in this game, but apparently the Mark 1 and 2, and possibly 3, but certainly the Mark 1 and Mark 2 GT40s apparently had a tendency to get a little light in the nose the faster the car was going because of the aerodynamics of the thing. It was, a low drag design, at least for the time, but they hadn't really figured out all the principles of like downforce and stuff like that at in the 60s. There's still something yet to come. They were basically just trying to make things smooth so they would move through the air. Super cool, super nice. And yeah, in the case of the GT40, and there are other cars that are like this. I remember reading someplace, even though of course I've never had the chance to experience either one myself, but I've also read that the Lamborghini Miura, another car whose front end gets fairly light, the faster you move, the nose just sort of starts to lift up because, sort of smooth underneath the nose too, so air starts to travel under there. Different speeds and things. Creates lift. I don't know that many different principles of flight. You're looking for a different vulture. Hoo-hoo-y. But yeah, Lamborghini Miura is apparently another one that was noted for that. Also, interestingly enough, I remember hearing that about the Maserati Ghibli, which is unusual because that's a front-engine car, and it was a front-engine car with a big old V8 in it, so you would imagine that the nose would be kind of heavy. And yet, apparently, the nose could get light. And the problem with the front end of the car being light is, of course, that is where your turning wheels are. So, say you wanted to change directions or something like that, and the front wheels were not getting very much traction because they were sort of almost lifting off the ground, that'd be a real problem. You're gonna have a bad time. If you can't steer your car, you're gonna have a bad time. There we go. I mean, I'm not worried about the results of this event. I think we're going to win just fine. We're going to get some money and see a cool prize car. Now we just have to play the waiting game. Problem is that the waiting game sucks, and we'd all rather be playing Hungry Hungry Hippos. I appreciate this GT40, I really do. I just wish I knew why the computer got to use it for the mid-range historic car cup when I can't. Did they put air restrictors in it? Did they intentionally chop off their top their stock horsepower rating? You know, if that's what they did and allowed them to compete, I'd do that temporarily. It's something you can reverse, right? Oh, jeez. This is not going. Yeah, folks, this is because I'm getting tired. This isn't because the car is significantly worse this go-around on poor tires than the previous go-around. This is just sleepy Bobo being sleepy. But I want to record a little something tonight, and I didn't know what else to be doing right now. I didn't want to spend an entire video just futzing around, looking at my garage, looking at races, looking at my garage, looking at races, as I sometimes do. I don't spend entire videos doing that, I say, and know full well probably the first video of this series was me looking around at cars, trying to decide what car to buy as my first car. I always find that a fun decision to be getting involved in. I like the used car shopping of this game. One of the Gran Turismo games in general. I like going around looking at used cars now on Craigslist. I don't buy them. Occasionally look. Inspired by, you know, trying to look up stuff about the Altezza Cup and talking about that car the other day, I was looking at Lexus IS 300s. The market on them has gone down a little bit. You can get one for a couple of grand. Less than 10 grand, easy. Problem is, Lexuses from like 2001, 2002, sort of the later years of the IS, the original model IS in this, you know, classic style, which I really like the way these ones looked. Later on, they sort of started, you know, getting into this kind of like melty thing, styling thing that so many luxury cars and just standard cars seem to have anymore. But problem with all those cars is going to be that they pretty much all have 180,000 miles on them. And yes, you can say Toyotas and Lexuses last forever and all that sort of thing. And yeah, they're quite good and all, but at that point in time, they're still going to need some fairly major component repairs, probably. So it's a little hard to justify. They made a station wagon version of the Lexus IS, which I'm overly enamored with. Because, as you guys may probably already know about Bobo, I think station wagons are a cool idea. You can put all your stuff in your car and it's still a car. And it's not pretending to be something else. It's not. It's not a truck pretending to be a minivan because it's carrying a bunch of kids around. It's not a station wagon pretending it's an SUV because it's got high-rise suspension on it. It's just a station wagon. It's just a car with a trunk on it. Which I guess then someone would say, well, that's faking being a car. Like, no, it is a car. It doesn't have to fake being a car. It's a car. It just has a wagon on the back of it. It has the trunk goes all the way up to the roof instead of cutting off at the glass. Well, either through poor driving or something like that, I have managed to shred up this set of rear tires a lot more than the first set. Let that be a lesson to you folks. Drive responsibly, drive sanely, and your tires will last you longer, among other things. I managed to get something like 80,000 miles out of the first set of tires on my current car, which just gives you an indication of how, like, not super exciting and sporty and I'm gonna go drive this car super fast that car was. Or is, I should say. It's a fine car. Does what it's supposed to do. Does what it says in the tin. Yep. That wasn't great. Although I don't think that green dot that's the closest behind me is actually a lap car. Or a car on the same lap as I am. If it is, I'm in trouble and I need to just drive this final lap carefully. This isn't the final lap, I should say. The upcoming lap that I'm about to start. Interestingly, I have never seen, and there are other people that have, like, I've looked at a couple of facts on it. Everybody's like, oh, when your tires are red, you're in real trouble. I don't know if you keep on driving on them whether they'll eventually explode, because I always change them before they get that red. Haha, lols. And I'm in the same boat. Like, I usually will change them once they get as bad as all this. I've never, as an experiment, just tried to keep them on and see whether or not they would pop. It seems like an awful lot of extra simulation to go through for that effect, so probably what we're seeing right now is about the worst of it. So this is just extra slow. Consider this an early parade lap, all you people in cool buildings and stuff, as I drive around the remainder of Seattle here. Don't catch up on me, whoever you are. Don't do it. Don't snap into me. We've got this, folks. We've got it. We're about to pick up some big money and pick up a cool prize car. What's it gonna be? Gonna be brawlers, shot callers, ballers. Oh, the 97 SS was the... oh, see? The computer can't do it either. That GTS Viper was slower than the GT350 and the Camaro SS. I find that shocking, stunning. Oh, again, it was the GTX that was behind us there. how much of a lap were you behind us, 97 Camaro SS? Because I did pass that car at one point. I guess it got back around me during pit stops? Pit stop? Zoom, zoom. You know, I wanted to find out how long it took you, or how far behind me you were, Camaro, but you're not making this easy. Come on. Are you gonna get passed now? Are you gonna get passed by this Shelby? Is that what's gonna happen now, little baby? Huh? Huh? Look, my car has managed to complete another lap. You just parked someplace because you're feeling sorry for yourself? Seriously, what's going on here? Minute 47. Yeah, we're not watching that on replay. Get real. Well, thank you, GT40, for doing this GT40 laps. You know what? Even if you guys didn't see it, I'm gonna save the game anyways. Even if this video is completely unusable and recording software crashes and everything happens, I'm gonna go ahead and save this anyway. Because it's like I said, you can get more than one car. So if I wanted to be super completionist about this game, which I'm going to win all the races, you can't own all of the cars at the same time. There's a limit on the number of cars you can have. But yeah, let's see which car I got. And maybe in a future video we'll find a place to take that car out and do something with it, whatever car it is. What do we got? Probably going to be American. The GT90. You've seen that in the super cool showroom, right? Though there were rumors of series production when the GT90 concept car unveiled, Ford's mid-90s supercar never went into production. It sure didn't. Angles and plain styling did have a lasting effect. Even before the Ultimate Jelly Bean 1996 Taurus was introduced, the new edge styling of the later Ka, Puma, Cougar, and Focus made its debut with the GT90. Yeah, I suppose so. It's a little bit too angular, honestly, but what do you say? Mid-engine GT90 definitely had performance potential. The GT40-like semi-monocoque chassis housed a 6-liter V12 engine with a block made from two modular 4.6-liter dual overhead cam V8 engine blocks chopped, spliced, and welded together. Oh. When they say the modular 4.6, they're talking about the 4.6-liter that was in Mustangs at the time, if I'm thinking correctly. 4 turbochargers fed it with the resulting 720 horsepower at 63,000 RPM, 6,300 RPM at 650 pound-feet. Sorry, folks, I'm tired. All that complex exhaust plumbing made so much heat that the muffler had to be shielded by ceramic material similar to space shuttle re-entry shields. Too soon. Developers likened the 4 exhaust pipes poking out of the GT40's rear deck to the tail of a Saturn V rocket. Sure. Appropriate given the power. Sure. The GT90 was no lightweight, but with power to spare, it was very fast. Top speed was estimated 220 miles an hour with a 0 to 60 time of 3.6 seconds. Huge tires on 18-inch front and 19-inch rear wheels, and an unequal length control arm suspension implied great cornering performance. They implied them. They didn't necessarily say they were so. Well, that's cool. What spec can you tell us here? Suspension things, racing things. Coincidentally, what parts do you have? suspension, full customization, racing tires, transmission, racing modifications. On a lark, as long as we're out here and as long as this video is long, let's do the long song. What if I put a sport muffler on this car? What if I did something to attempt to make it less powerful? Could that be done? No, you sure can't. You could attempt to NA tune it to make it even more powerful. That does not accomplish what we were going for. What if I gave it a computer? I mean, it's not like those. Yeah, they really had that much in the way of computer stuff. Anyways, at this point, I'm just a waste of time. So I'm gonna go ahead and sign off here and now. But now we have the GT90, folks. Another super crazy, super concepty supercar. Woo! Anyways, this is Bobo the Vulture. This is Let's Play Gran Turismo 2. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see all you guys next time. Bye-bye now.